Hi everyone, this is continuation of topic 8 nervous system of the human anatomy lectures. This is lecture 4th on the nervous system. We started learning about the human brain structure in the previous lecture and we've completed the cerebrum. Now we are moving to the next region of the brain, the diencephalon. Deep to the cerebral hemispheres in the central core of the brain, we find the diencephalon. This sits on top of the brainstem and it's made up of three parts: the thalamus, epithalamus, and hypothalamus. The diencephalon is shown in purple color in this figure. This figure shows the two thalami and the hypothalamus. The thalamus is the large central egg-shaped mass of gray and white matter that makes up 80% of the diencephalon. It is a major integration and relay center that edits and sorts information going into the cerebrum. So it essentially functions as the gateway into the cerebrum. It surrounds the third ventricle, which is one of the fluid-filled cavities in the brain. The epithalamus is located on the posterior and superior aspect of the diencephalon. It forms the roof of the third ventricle. It houses an endocrine gland known as the pineal body that secretes melatonin hormone. This hormone regulates the sleep-wake patterns. Epithalamus also includes the choroid plexus, which are specialized blood vessels made up of ependymal cells, and the choroid plexus form the cerebrospinal fluid. This figure shows the thalamus, part of the epithalamus, and the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is located on the anterior and inferior aspect of the diencephalon. It is a small structure that contains the nuclei whose neurons carry out many of the body's homeostatic functions. So it is an important autonomic nervous system center. An endocrine gland called the pituitary gland, which is also the master endocrine gland, is connected to the hypothalamus by a stalk called the infundibulum. The hypothalamus produces two hormones of its own. The third major region of the brain stem, attaches to the spinal cord. It regulates automatic functions such as heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rhythm, etc. There are three parts of the brain stem. The first one is called the midbrain or the mesencephalon. The second one is pons, and the third one is medulla oblongata. This figure shows the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. The most superior portion of the brain stem is the midbrain or the mesencephalon. This is mainly made up of nerve fibers. There are two bulging fiber tracts which are known as the cerebral peduncles. These are the ascending and the descending tracts that link the thalamus to the midbrain. Dorsally, there are four rounded protrusions known as the corpora quadrigemina. So there are four protuberances or colliculi, two superior colliculi and two inferior colliculi. These are reflex centers for vision and hearing. This figure shows corpora quadrigemina and cerebral peduncles. Pons is the rounded part of the brainstem which bulges anteriorly. This is also made up of nerve fibers, and the nuclei here are associated with breathing control. You can see the pons shown in this figure. The last segment of the brainstem is the medulla oblongata that continues inferiorly with the spinal cord. The medulla also contains important control centers such as the heart rate control, blood pressure, breathing, swallowing, and also vomiting. Medulla oblongata is shown in this figure. The reticular formation is a diffuse mass of gray matter which is scattered along the brainstem, and the RAS, which is the reticular activating system, is associated with the sleep-awake cycles. This figure shows the reticular formation. The fourth major region of the brain is the cerebellum, that is located posteriorly. It consists of two highly convoluted lobes connected by a worm-like piece called the vermis. Like the cerebral hemispheres, the cerebellum has an outer cerebellar cortex which is composed of grey matter and inner white matter. The cerebellar white matter is called the arbor vitae because of its resemblance to the branches of a tree. The cerebellum is involved in the involuntary coordination of body movement. It also reduces error with movements. This figure shows the location of cerebellum. The CNS is protected by several layers. From superficial to deep, these layers are the scalp or the skin. Then inside or deep to the scalp is the skull. Deep to the skin is the vertebral column. That means the bones are protecting. After the bones, then it's the connective tissue membranes known as the meninges. Also, there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid that protects from inside. And finally, the blood-brain barrier also protects the CNS. This figure illustrates the layers protecting the CNS. A set of three membranes, collectively known as the meninges, surround the brain. The meninges include the following. The first one is dura mater. The outermost meninx is the thick, leathery, double-layered dura mater. The superficial periosteal layer is fused to the skull, and the deeper meningeal layer is continuous with the dura mater of the spinal cord. The two layers of dura are fused, but in certain regions the meningeal layer separates from the periosteal layer. The middle meninx, the arachnoid mater, is separated from the dura mater by a space called the subdural space. Small bundles of the arachnoid mater, called the arachnoid villi, project into the dural sinuses and allow CSF to re-enter the blood. So what is the dural sinus? Spaces between the periosteal and meningeal dural layers are collectively known as the dural sinuses. The function of arachnoid villi is to reabsorb the CSF. The thinnest innermost meninx is the pia mater. The pia mater clings to the surface of the cerebral hemispheres and follows the contours of the sulci and gyri. It is richly supplied with blood vessels. A space between the pia mater and the arachnoid mater, called the subarachnoid space, is filled with CSF. The human brain contains 4 hollow spaces which are known as ventricles. The inside of the ventricles has ciliated ependymal cells, and the ventricles are filled with CSF or the cerebrospinal fluid. The CSF is very similar in composition to blood plasma. It is formed by the choroid plexus, which are modified ependymal cells in all of the ventricles. The function of CSF is, first, to form a fluid cushion that protects the brain from inside. Second, serves as a sink for all waste disposal from the brain, and third, it helps in the reduction of brain weight. The CSF is circulated in not only the ventricles but also in the subarachnoid space and central canal that travels down the spinal cord. This figure shows the arrangement of the ventricles in anterior view. Human brain, as mentioned previously, has 4 ventricles. The 4 ventricles include 2 lateral ventricles. These are the right and left lateral ventricles, which are present in cerebral hemispheres, and they resemble a ram's horns. The second one is the third ventricle, which is present in the diencephalon, and the last one is the fourth ventricle, which is present in the brainstem. The third ventricle is connected to the fourth ventricle by the cerebral aqueduct. CSF continues down from the fourth ventricle into the central canal of the spinal cord. This is the left lateral view of the brain ventricles. The blood-brain barrier includes the least permeable blood capillaries present in the body, and this protects the brain and maintains a constant environment inside. How are these blood capillaries so impermeable? The permeability is decreased due to the presence of tight junctions between the capillary endothelial cells and also the perivascular feet of the astrocytes, okay, that cling to the blood capillaries. And the blood-brain barrier, it helps in excluding many potentially harmful substances from reaching inside the CNS. However, the BBB is useless as a barrier when it comes to alcohol, nicotine, anesthesia, respiratory gases, or fat-soluble molecules. Traumatic brain injuries. Concussion is a mild brain injury and there is no permanent brain damage. Contusion is where some nerve cell damage occurs, and remember that nervous tissue does not regenerate, there is no mitosis. Cerebral edema means when there is swelling due to accumulation of fluid. So this is a swelling because of inflammatory response. What happens is if there is too much swelling, it may compress and kill the brain tissue. Stroke or cerebrovascular accident, CVA. Stroke happens when a blood vessel that is supplying a region of the brain gets ruptured. So when there is no blood flow, there is no oxygen transport. And in the absence of oxygen, that particular brain tissue dies. So the effect of stroke could be something as serious as death or could be minor loss of certain functions. Some common effects are hemiplegia, which is one-sided paralysis, aphasis, which is damage to the speech center, so you will notice a slurred speech or difficulty in speaking. Sometimes the body gives a warning sign for a stroke that is coming later on, and that is known as a TIA or trans ischemia attack, where there is temporary brain restriction of blood flow. Alzheimer's disease is a neurodegenerative disease. This is usually seen in the elderly people, but recent years have shown the disease onset at a younger age. There are some structural changes, anatomical changes that occur in the brain, such as deposit of abnormal proteins, and also the nerve fibers get twisted. Patients would experience memory loss initially. They could also have irritability, there is some confusion, and in the late stages, the patients start hallucinating, and this could even lead to death. Sadly, the death is associated with, forgetting simple things, such as the patient would forget how to breathe, how to chew food. And this puts a lot of financial burden not only on the patient or the patient's family, but also on the caregiver and the society as a whole.